Isabella Duarte is at the altar with Ricardo. While holding the bouquet, her hands tremble. The camera shows Ricardo's cold eyes and Gabriel's attentive blue ones in the audience. Helena, suffocated, runs away in tears through the side door of the church. Gabriel chases after her. It ends with suspense. Helena stumbles on the stairs and falls into Gabriel's arms. The bells of the church rang with solemn clarity, their sound echoing across the marble walls and through the stained glass windows. The scent of lilies and roses filled the air, carefully arranged in golden vases that lined the aisle. All eyes turned toward the entrance, where Isabella Duarte appeared, radiant yet trembling, her white wedding gown flowing behind her like a river of silk. Her long, dark hair had been carefully curled and pinned, her green eyes framed by delicate makeup. To the guests, she looked like the picture of perfection. But inside, Isabella's heart pounded with fear. Ricardo Montero, her groom, stood at the altar, his tall frame imposing in a black tailored suit. His dark eyes held a sharp intensity, his expression stern and unyielding. For years, Ricardo had been admired in business circles for his cold intelligence and ruthless efficiency. To many, he was the perfect match, wealthy, powerful, and commanding. Yet Isabella, holding the bouquet tightly in her trembling hands, knew that love was absent from his gaze. Ricardo saw her not as a partner, but as an ornament to his family's legacy. Seated in the front pew was Gabriel Montero, Ricardo's younger brother. Unlike Ricardo, Gabriel's features carried a warmth that drew people in. His wavy brown hair softened his strong jawline, and his piercing blue eyes reflected thoughtfulness. Though dressed in a simple navy suit, he stood out among the crowd not because of wealth or authority, but because of the quiet strength in his presence. Gabriel had always been overshadowed by Ricardo's dominance, yet his sense of justice and compassion made him respected by those who knew him well. Isabella took her first steps down the aisle, the music swelling around her. Every eye in the room admired her beauty, yet no one could see the turmoil hidden behind her calm exterior. She had agreed to this marriage under pressure. Ricardo's mother, Dona Clara Montero, had insisted upon the union, citing family honor and alliances. Clara, elegant in her gray silk dress, watched from the front row with a calculating smile. Her silver hair framed a face that bore no softness, only expectation. For Clara, this wedding was not about love, but about consolidating power. As Isabella approached the altar, Ricardo extended his hand. His grip was firm, his expression unreadable. The priest began to speak, his voice resonating through the vaulted ceiling. Isabella's heart raced faster with each word. She glanced toward Gabriel, seated just behind Ricardo, and their eyes met for the briefest moment. His expression was not judgmental, but concerned, almost protective. In that fleeting second, Isabella felt seen, truly seen, for the first time that day. When the priest asked if she would take Ricardo as her husband, silence filled the room. Isabella's lips parted, but no words emerged. Ricardo's eyes narrowed slightly, a warning in their dark depths. Clara's gaze bore into her, cold and demanding. The guests leaned forward, sensing the tension. Then, with a sudden intake of breath, Isabella let the bouquet slip from her hands. It fell to the floor with a soft thud, petals scattering across the polished marble. Gasps echoed through the church as she turned abruptly, gathering the folds of her gown in trembling hands. She ran down the aisle, her veil trailing behind her, brushing against stunned guests. The church erupted in whispers and exclamations. Ricardo's jaw tightened as he stepped forward, fury flashing in his eyes. Clara rose to her feet, her voice sharp as she called after Isabella. But it was Gabriel who moved fastest. He slipped past the pews and followed Isabella through the side door of the church, his footsteps echoing against the stone. Isabella burst into the open air, her lungs burning as she ran down the steps. The afternoon sun illuminated her gown, making her appear almost ghostly as she fled. Her vision blurred with tears, and her shoes caught against the uneven stone. She stumbled, her body tipping forward. Before she could fall, strong arms caught her. She looked up, breathless, into Gabriel's blue eyes. His grip was steady, protective, and for a moment, the chaos of the world around her faded. Isabella's heart thundered in her chest, not only from fear but from the sudden realization that in the arms of Ricardo's brother she felt safer than she ever had at Ricardo's side. The crowd spilled out from the church, voices rising in confusion. Ricardo's dark figure appeared in the doorway, his face twisted with restrained anger. Clara stood behind him, her hand gripping his arm as though to hold him back. Gabriel tightened his hold on Isabella, shielding her from view as best he could. "You don't have to go back in there if you don't or to want to," he whispered, his voice low but firm. His words were not a command, but a promise. Isabella's tears fell freely now, streaking her face as she clutched the fabric of Gabriel's suit. Her lips trembled as she tried to speak, but the weight of the moment silenced her. The church bells continued to toll, their sound now haunting rather than celebratory. The guests watched in stunned silence as the runaway bride remained in the arms of the groom's brother. For the first time, Isabella felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps her fate was not sealed. Yet as she glanced up at Ricardo's furious gaze, she knew this escape would come at a price. And so, in that single moment, the story truly began. A young woman caught between duty and freedom, between fear and love, and between two brothers whose paths would soon collide. The church courtyard had descended into chaos. Guests spilled into the sunlit square, their voices a mixture of shock, curiosity, and judgment. Whispers spread like wildfire, each retelling more dramatic than the last. The bride had run away. She had abandoned Ricardo Montero at the altar. She was in the arms of his brother. The scandal was immediate, and in families like the Monteros, reputation was everything. Isabella Duarte clung to Gabriel's arm, her chest rising and falling in quick, shallow breaths. Her wedding gown was no longer pristine. The hem was dirt-stained from the stone steps, and her veil had come loose, tangled in her dark curls. Tears still lingered in her green eyes, but there was also defiance. She had chosen to run, and there was no turning back. Gabriel guided her away from the center of attention, his tall frame shielding her from the stares of the crowd. His blue eyes remained calm, though inside he could feel the weight of what had just happened. He knew Ricardo's pride, and he knew their mother's ambition. Both would see Isabella's escape as betrayal, not just to Ricardo, but to the family's name. Behind them, Ricardo Montero stood rigid on the church steps, his expression carved in fury. His black suit gleamed in the sunlight, but his eyes were darker than ever, a storm gathering behind them. His fists were clenched at his sides, and though Clara's hand pressed against his arm, restraining him, Ricardo's entire body radiated anger. Clara's face was pale yet composed, her sharp gaze fixed on Isabella and Gabriel, as if already calculating the damage to their prestige. "Gabriel!" Ricardo's voice thundered across the courtyard, silencing many of the murmurs. "Bring her back. Now!" Gabriel stopped but did not release Isabella. He turned his head slightly, meeting his brother's gaze across the distance. There was no fear in Gabriel's blue eyes, only quiet resolve. "She doesn't want this, Ricardo. You can see it as clearly as I can." The tension between the brothers was palpable, hanging heavy in the summer air. Guests watched, sensing that this was no ordinary quarrel, but the beginning of something much larger. Isabella tightened her hold on Gabriel's arm. "Please, don't let them take me back," she whispered, her voice fragile but determined. Gabriel looked down at her and gave a small nod. His grip on her hand strengthened, a silent reassurance. Then he guided her quickly toward the narrow street that led away from the church, his long strides purposeful. Isabella gathered the folds of her gown and followed, her heart racing as they moved farther from the sound of the bells and the whispers of the crowd. The city beyond the church was alive with afternoon bustle. Vendors calling out their wares, carriages rattling across cobblestone streets, children running between the stalls. Yet even here, Isabella felt the weight of countless eyes. Her gown made her impossible to ignore, a fleeing bride whose story would soon travel through every corner of the city. Gabriel stopped near a quiet alley and looked around before speaking. "We can't stay in the open. People will recognize you, and Ricardo will send men to find us." His voice was low but firm, his protective instinct clear. Isabella wiped her tears with the back of her hand, her fingers trembling. "Where can we go? I have nowhere else." For a moment, Gabriel hesitated. His life had always been entangled with his brother's shadow. Helping Isabella meant defying not only Ricardo but also their mother, who valued obedience above all. Yet as he looked at her, her pale face framed by dark hair, her eyes full of desperation, Gabriel knew he could not abandon her. "There's an old villa on the outskirts of town," he said at last. "It hasn't been used in years. We can go there until things calm down." Isabella nodded, though fear still lingered in her expression. She trusted Gabriel, not because of his words, but because of the way he held her with steady certainty, as if he would never let her fall. They began their walk, moving carefully through back streets and quieter paths. Isabella's gown slowed her pace, but Gabriel adjusted for her, offering his arm when the stones were uneven. In that small act of kindness, Isabella felt a stark contrast between Gabriel and Ricardo. Where Ricardo's grip had always been forceful, Gabriel's was protective. Meanwhile, at the church, Ricardo's anger burned hotter with every passing minute. He stormed back inside, his polished shoes striking the floor like thunder. Clara followed, her lips pressed in a thin line. "This cannot stand," she whispered fiercely. "Do you realize what people will say? The Montero name will be dragged through disgrace." Ricardo turned sharply, his dark eyes flashing. "She humiliated me, in front of everyone, and my brother." He trailed off, his voice thick with venom. "He will pay for this." Clara placed a hand on her son's shoulder, her own composure already returning. "Then make them both pay. But do it carefully. We cannot allow the family to look weak." Ricardo's jaw tightened. His pride had been wounded, and in his world, wounds demanded retribution. As the afternoon faded, Gabriel and Isabella reached the villa. Its walls were covered with ivy, its windows clouded with dust. The iron gate creaked as Gabriel pushed it open, leading Isabella into the neglected garden. It was quiet, hidden from the city, a place where time seemed to stand still. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of old wood and stone. Sunlight filtered through cracks in the shutters, painting stripes across the worn floors. It was far from comfortable, yet for Isabella it felt like a refuge. She sank onto an old chair, her gown spilling around her, and finally allowed herself to breathe. Gabriel stood nearby, his expression thoughtful but steady. "You're safe here for now," he said. "But this is only the beginning. Ricardo will not let this go." Isabella looked up at him, her eyes shimmering with gratitude and fear. "Why are you helping me? You know what this will cost you." Gabriel's gaze held hers, unwavering. "Because sometimes doing what is right matters more than loyalty to blood, and because no one deserves to be forced into a life they don't choose." Isabella's heart ached at his words. For the first time since the wedding was arranged, she felt a spark of hope, fragile but real. Yet even as night settled over the villa, both knew that their choices had set events into motion that could not be undone. Ricardo's fury would not rest, and Clara's ambition would not falter. The runaway bride and the groom's brother had crossed a line, and the consequences were only just beginning. Night fell over the abandoned villa. wrapping the building in silence. The moonlight filtered through broken shutters, casting silver beams across the dusty floor. Isabella Duarte sat near a window, still in her wedding gown, though the once pristine fabric now carried traces of dust and earth. Her long, dark hair fell loosely over her shoulders, framing her pale face. The green in her eyes seemed brighter under the faint light, though worry shadowed them. Across the room, Gabriel Montero kept watch. His tall frame leaned against the wall, his blue eyes scanning the darkness outside. Though the villa was hidden on the outskirts of the city, he knew his brother well enough to expect a search. Ricardo Montero was not a man who accepted humiliation quietly. His pride had been wounded, and his fury would not fade until he reclaimed what he believed was his. For hours, Isabella and Gabriel exchanged few words. The tension of their escape still hung between them, and the silence was broken only by the occasional creak of the old house. Finally, Isabella spoke, her voice soft. "Do you think he will come tonight?" Gabriel turned toward her, his features calm but serious. His brown hair caught the pale moonlight, giving him an almost solemn air. "Ricardo doesn't forgive easily, but for now he needs to decide how to act in front of the city. His pride will demand revenge, but our mother will insist on strategy. That may buy us some time." Isabella lowered her gaze, her hands twisting the edge of her gown. "I never wanted to cause this much chaos. I only wanted to escape a life I didn't choose." Gabriel crossed the room and crouched beside her chair, his expression softening. "You didn't cause this, Isabella. You were forced into it. You only had the courage to say no when everyone else expected your silence." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but she managed a faint smile. Gabriel's words carried a kindness she had rarely known in the Montero household. Ricardo had been cold, firm, always treating her as an ornament to complete the family's prestige, but Gabriel saw her as something more, a person with fears, choices, and dignity. Meanwhile, across the city, the Montero estate was alive with tension. Ricardo paced in his study, his polished shoes striking the marble floor with each step. His black hair was disheveled, his jaw tight. Clara Montero sat in an armchair nearby, her posture straight and her gray-streaked hair neatly pinned. Her face betrayed little emotion, but her sharp eyes followed every movement of her eldest son. "You let her run," Ricardo said bitterly, his voice low but seething, "in front of everyone. And my brother, my own brother, took her side." Clara's voice was calm, though firm. "Anger is natural, but anger without strategy destroys more than it builds. If you storm after them tonight, the city will see desperation. You must act with patience. Appear strong. Appear in control. Then strike when they least expect it." Ricardo turned sharply, his dark eyes flashing. "And what of Gabriel? He humiliated me. He made me look weak." Clara's lips curved into a thin line. "Gabriel has always been different. He does not understand power the way you do, but do not worry. His weakness will reveal itself in time. For now, let the city whisper. Soon we will decide how to silence those whispers." Back at the villa, Isabella drifted into uneasy sleep, her head resting on her folded arms. Gabriel remained awake, his senses alert to every sound outside. The night air was cool, carrying the faint rustle of leaves and the distant call of an owl. Though his body longed for rest, his mind remained sharp. He knew Ricardo, and he knew Clara. They would not forgive. They would not forget. As dawn approached, Isabella stirred. Her green eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the dim light. She found Gabriel still by the window, his tall silhouette outlined by the pale glow of morning. "You didn't sleep," she whispered. Gabriel shook his head. "I couldn't. Not while we're exposed here." She rose from her seat, moving closer. The delicate fabric of her gown brushed the dusty floor as she walked. "Why do you stay, Gabriel? Why risk everything for me?" For a moment he hesitated, Then his voice came steady, calm. "Because I've watched you suffer in silence for too long. You were never truly seen in that house. And because—" His words trailed, but his eyes held hers. "Because I believe in your right to choose." Her heart quickened at his words. No one had ever spoken to her that way. For so long she had been treated as property, her life negotiated between powerful families. But in Gabriel's presence, she felt something entirely new: freedom. Their quiet moment was broken by a sound outside, the crunch of footsteps on gravel. Both froze. Gabriel's hand went instinctively to the old iron latch of the door, his muscles tense. Isabella's breath caught, her eyes wide with fear. He gestured for her to stay back, his voice low. "Stay behind me." The footsteps grew louder, closer until they stopped just beyond the gate. A long silence followed, heavy with suspense. Then the creak of iron as the gate swung open. Gabriel's heart pounded, but he held his ground, ready to confront whoever stepped inside. The door rattled once, then fell quiet again. Whoever had entered the grounds had not yet revealed themselves. Isabella clutched the folds of her gown, her fear clear. In the silence, Gabriel whispered, more to himself than to her, "It begins." For in that moment, he knew their hiding place had already been discovered. The silence inside the abandoned villa was heavy, broken only by the faint sound of footsteps outside. Gabriel Montero's tall frame remained tense as he stood before the old wooden door, his hand resting on the rusted iron latch. His blue eyes narrowed, watching the thin crack of moonlight between the boards. Isabella Duarte clutched the folds of her torn wedding gown, her green eyes wide, her breath unsteady. The steps had stopped, but the air carried the unmistakable weight of someone's presence beyond the gate. For a long moment, neither moved. Then a voice rose in the night, low, firm, and unmistakably familiar. "Gabriel, open the door." Gabriel's shoulders stiffened. It was not Ricardo's voice, but that of a family guard, loyal to the Montero estate. He recognized the tone immediately, stern, trained, and disciplined. It confirmed his fear. Ricardo had already set his men to search. "Stay back," Gabriel whispered to Isabella. She nodded quickly, stepping toward the shadows of the far corner, her dark hair falling over her pale face. The guard called again, this time louder. "I know you are inside. There is no use hiding. Come quietly, and no harm will come." Gabriel exhaled slowly, steadying himself. He knew this was only a half-truth. Ricardo's humiliation would not allow leniency, no matter what words his men used. Stepping carefully, Gabriel moved closer to the door, pressing his ear against the wood. He counted 2 sets of footsteps outside, maybe 3. Armed men. Isabella's whisper broke the silence. "What will you do?" He turned, meeting her frightened eyes. His voice was calm, though a storm brewed within him. "We can't let them take us back. If they return us to the estate, Ricardo will decide our fate, and my mother will ensure there is no escape next time." Her heart raced, but she nodded. She trusted him, though fear twisted inside her. Suddenly the door shuddered under a heavy strike. Isabella gasped, covering her mouth with her hand to stifle the sound. Gabriel braced himself as another blow rattled the hinges. Dust fell from the ceiling with each impact. "Last chance!" the guard barked. "Open or we force our way in!" Gabriel's eyes scanned the dim room. The villa was old, forgotten, but its walls still held secrets. He had explored similar estates in his youth, playing hide-and-seek while Ricardo dismissed such games as childish. Moving quickly, Gabriel pushed aside a heavy cabinet near the far wall, revealing a narrow passage hidden behind. "Come," he ordered softly. Isabella hesitated only a moment before hurrying to his side. They slipped into the passage just as the door burst open with a deafening crack. Wood splintered and men stormed inside, their boots echoing on the dusty floor. The guards' torches lit the room in orange flames, revealing only emptiness. The chair where Isabella had sat was abandoned, the air heavy with the faint scent of dust and fabric. "Search!" the leader barked. The men scattered, overturning broken furniture, opening doors, and checking every shadow. Yet the narrow passage remained hidden, concealed by the weight of the cabinet Gabriel had dragged back into place. Inside the cramped corridor, Isabella pressed close to Gabriel, her heart pounding so loudly she feared it would betray them. The air smelled of earth and damp stone. Gabriel's arm shielded her as they moved carefully down the path, the faint echo of voices fading behind them. The passage eventually opened into a cellar. Broken crates and shattered bottles lay scattered across the floor, remnants of a time when the villa had been alive with wealth and gatherings. Now, it was a place of escape. Gabriel guided Isabella toward a narrow stairwell that led upward. At the top, another door waited. He pushed it open slowly, and the two emerged into the cool night air. They were now behind the villa, concealed by overgrown trees and thick shrubs. Isabella exhaled in relief, though her body still trembled. "You knew this place had a way out." Gabriel allowed himself a faint smile. "Old houses always do. My brother never bothered to learn such things. He thought power came only from titles and wealth. He never understood that knowledge itself is power." They moved quickly into the shadows of the forest. The distant glow of the guards' torches flickered through the broken windows of the villa, but none suspected the pair had already escaped. The trees muffled their movements, the earth soft beneath their hurried steps. Hours passed before they finally stopped to rest. They found shelter beneath a cluster of tall pines, where the ground was dry and the branches thick enough to hide them from sight. Isabella sank onto a fallen log, her chest rising and falling with exhaustion. Gabriel remained standing, his eyes scanning the dark forest. For a moment, silence reigned. Then Isabella spoke softly. "Do you think he knows? That it was you who helped me escape?" Gabriel met her gaze, his expression somber. "He knows. Ricardo is many things, but he is not blind. He will see my defiance as betrayal, and he will not forgive it." Her hands trembled as she clasped them together. "Then you risked everything for me." Gabriel's voice was steady. "It was never about risk. It was about doing what was right. You were trapped in a life you did not choose. I could not stand by and watch." The sincerity in his words filled Isabella with warmth, even in the cold night. For the first time in years, she felt someone truly cared for her freedom. Not for what she represented to a powerful family, but far from the forest, in the Montero estate, Ricardo stood by the tall windows of his study, his sharp features lit by the flicker of candlelight. His dark eyes burned with fury as one of his guards reported their failure. "They escaped," the man admitted, bowing his head. Ricardo's hand clenched into a fist, his jaw tightening. His black hair fell into his face as he turned away from the window. "Then find them again. Search every villa, every road, every forest. Do not return until you bring them back to me." Behind him, Clara Montero watched silently, her posture calm, her eyes calculating. At last she spoke, her voice sharp but controlled. "Patience, Ricardo. Anger will not bring them faster. We must think. Gabriel may believe he is clever, but his heart will betray him. He cares for her, and that will be his weakness." Ricardo's lips curved into a cold smile. "Then we will use that weakness, and when I find them, neither will escape again." In the forest, unaware of the words spoken in the grand estate, Isabella and Gabriel sat in silence, their bond growing stronger with each shared danger. Yet both knew the pursuit had only just begun. The shadows at the gate were only the beginning of a much darker storm. The forest was quiet, except for the distant cry of night birds and the rustle of leaves in the wind. Isabella Duarte sat with her back against the rough bark of a pine tree. her green eyes fixed on the shadows that danced in the moonlight. Her once pristine wedding dress was torn and dirt-stained, its delicate lace dragging across the forest floor. Even so, she held herself with dignity, her posture graceful despite her exhaustion. Beside her, Gabriel Montero kept watch. His tall figure was tense, his blue eyes sharp as he scanned the darkness. The faint silver light highlighted his strong jawline and the strands of brown hair that fell loosely across his forehead. Every movement in the distance made his hand twitch toward a broken branch he carried like a weapon. Hours had passed since they escaped the abandoned villa. Neither spoke much, but the silence between them was not empty. It carried unspoken fears and a fragile bond forged under pressure. At last, Isabella broke the silence, her voice soft, yet filled with weight. "Gabriel," she said, her words trembling slightly, "I need to know. Why did you help me? You could have stayed silent, obeyed your brother, and remained safe in the estate. Why risk everything for me?" Gabriel turned his gaze toward her, his expression steady but conflicted. His voice, when he finally spoke, carried the gravity of years unspoken. "Because I could no longer stand in the shadows of his cruelty. Ricardo may be my brother, but I have watched him twist lives, demand obedience, and crush anyone who dared to defy him. And when I saw you at the altar, your eyes pleading for freedom, I knew I could not let you become another one of his possessions." Isabella's chest tightened. The word possessions echoed in her mind. She had felt it too, the cold weight of being seen not as a woman with her own soul, but as a tool for power, a pawn in a family's endless pursuit of status. "You saw me," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "You truly saw me when no one else did." Gabriel gave a faint nod, his jaw tightening. "I saw you, Isabella, and I will not let him destroy you." The sincerity in his words filled her with a fragile hope, yet with it came fear, for she knew Ricardo's reach was long and his fury merciless. As dawn approached, the forest began to stir with the sounds of life. Birds sang from the treetops, and shafts of golden light pierced the branches. Gabriel urged Isabella to her feet, his hand steady as he helped her rise. "We cannot stay here," he said firmly. "Ricardo will send men into every corner of this land. We must find a place beyond his control." "But where?" Isabella asked, brushing dirt from her gown. "Every village knows the Montero name. His wealth buys silence and loyalty. We cannot simply vanish." Gabriel's expression hardened. "There is one place he dares not reach. A monastery, far into the mountains. The monks there live apart from politics and family wars. If we can reach it, you will be safe, at least for a time." The thought of safety made Isabella's heart flutter, but she saw the cost in his eyes. "And you?" she asked. He paused before answering. "If I take you there, I may never return to the estate. To Ricardo, I will be the traitor brother, the man who stole his bride. He will not forgive, but I cannot regret this path. I chose it the moment I opened that door for you." Her gaze lingered on him, filled with gratitude and fear. She realized then that his sacrifice was not only for her freedom, but for his own soul. Gabriel had lived under Ricardo's shadow for too long, and this was his chance to stand as his own man. They set off through the forest, walking carefully along hidden paths. Hours passed, their footsteps carrying them deeper into the unknown. Isabella stumbled at times, her delicate shoes torn, but Gabriel was always there to steady her. Despite her exhaustion, she felt a strange strength growing within her, as though each step away from Ricardo was a step toward reclaiming herself. By midday, they reached the edge of the forest, where rolling fields stretched toward distant hills. In the distance, smoke rose from a village, its rooftops clustered together in quiet simplicity. Isabella's eyes lit with hope, but Gabriel's remained wary. "We must be careful," he warned. "Ricardo's men may already be here, searching. We will enter quietly, gather what we need, and leave before nightfall." The village was small, its narrow streets filled with farmers, children, and merchants calling out their wares. Isabella lowered her gaze, pulling a shawl Gabriel had found in the woods around her shoulders to cover her wedding gown. Gabriel walked beside her, his tall frame drawing occasional glances, but his serious demeanor discouraged questions. They entered a modest inn at the edge of the square. The innkeeper, a stout man with kind eyes, greeted them warmly. "Travelers, are you? You look weary. A meal and water will do you good." Gabriel offered a polite nod, his voice steady. "Only for a short time. We are passing through." As they sat at a wooden table, Isabella sipped water from a clay cup, her hands trembling slightly. For the first time in days, she tasted bread and fruit, and though simple, it felt like a feast. Yet the peace was fragile, for danger was never far. Their moment of rest was shattered when the inn's door opened with a heavy creak. A pair of men stepped inside, their dark cloaks and stern expressions betraying their purpose. Gabriel recognized them immediately, guards loyal to Ricardo. His heart quickened, but he kept his expression calm, leaning closer to Isabella. "Do not look at them. Keep your eyes on me." She obeyed, though her pulse thundered in her ears. The guard spoke quietly to the innkeeper, showing him something, likely a sketch of Isabella's face. The innkeeper's eyes flickered toward their table, and for a brief second, Isabella felt her world collapse. But then the man shook his head, feigning ignorance. The guards frowned, scanned the room once more, and left as suddenly as they had arrived. Isabella exhaled shakily. "He protected us." "Why?" Gabriel looked at the innkeeper, who simply gave a small, knowing smile. "Not all men bow to Ricardo," Gabriel murmured. "Some still value decency." But even as relief washed over them, Gabriel knew this was only a temporary reprieve. Ricardo's reach was vast, and every step forward carried the weight of pursuit. That night, as they left the village and pressed toward the mountains, Isabella glanced back once at the faint glow of lanterns in the distance. She realized then that her old life was gone, and the path ahead would test them both in ways neither could yet imagine. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the mountain path, painting the rugged terrain in hues of gold and gray. Isabella Duarte clutched the hem of her dirt-streaked wedding gown as she followed Gabriel Montero, whose tall frame moved confidently ahead. The air was thin and crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and earth. Every step they took echoed in the mountains, a reminder of both isolation and sanctuary. Gabriel's blue eyes scanned the winding trail constantly, noting every loose rock, every sudden drop, every rustle of leaves that could signal danger. His brown hair fell in a way that partially shaded his sharp features, yet the strength in his stance was unmistakable. He had led Isabella here with purpose, knowing the remoteness of these mountains would shield her from Ricardo's reach, at least temporarily. Isabella's green eyes, bright and alert despite exhaustion, occasionally wandered to the distant valleys below. The world she had fled, the church, her intended marriage, her former life, seemed smaller now, almost unreal, yet fear lingered beneath the surface, a constant companion. She trusted Gabriel, but she knew that escaping her past was only part of the struggle. "Gabriel," she whispered after a long pause, her voice trembling. "How long until we reach the monastery?" Gabriel did not look back. "Several hours still. The path is steep and we cannot rush. Every misstep could be fatal, and we cannot afford mistakes." His tone was calm, though firm, carrying both authority and care. "This monastery is hidden, protected by its location. Few can find it without guidance." Isabella nodded, steadying her breath as she adjusted the shawl Gabriel had given her to protect against the cold mountain air. "And the monks? Will they help us?" Gabriel's gaze softened. "Yes, they live apart from politics, wealth, and power. Their purpose is to protect those who seek refuge, not to judge. You will be safe there, at least for a time." The ascent grew steeper, forcing Isabella to rely on Gabriel's guidance. Each step was careful. The uneven rocks threatened to trip her, and her delicate shoes were worn thin. Gabriel extended his hand repeatedly, offering support. Though she was grateful, there was more than gratitude in her heart, an unspoken acknowledgement of the bond forming between them. Hours passed, the sun rising higher, casting shadows that shifted with the rugged terrain. They paused at a ledge overlooking a deep valley. The view was breathtaking, rolling hills, winding rivers, and distant villages that looked like tiny collections of colored dots. Isabella took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. "I can't believe how far we've come," she murmured. "It feels like another world." Gabriel's expression remained vigilant, but a faint smile tugged at his lips. "It is a different world, one where the past cannot reach us. But we must keep moving. Ricardo's reach may not extend here, but his men are thorough. He will search every possible path." Isabella glanced at him, her admiration evident. "You have risked everything for me. For a stranger, you've risked your life." Gabriel shook his head slightly. "You are not a stranger, Isabella. I've known you in that house, in the shadow of your fear. I've seen how you suffer quietly, how you endure without complaint. No one deserves that, not even for the sake of family ambition." Her pulse quickened at his words. In his voice was not only protection, but a sincerity she had never encountered within the Montero household. Ricardo's family, steeped in expectation and prestige, had never truly seen her. Gabriel's gaze acknowledged her existence in a way that ignited hope. As they continued, the terrain became more treacherous. Loose stones slid underfoot, and steep cliffs demanded caution. Isabella's hands gripped Gabriel's arm instinctively whenever the path narrowed. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely audible. Gabriel's hand rested gently on hers. "You're safe as long as I am here. Do not let fear rule you. Fear can paralyze, but courage moves us forward." Finally, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, they saw the monastery in the distance. Its stone walls blended with the mountain cliffs, and smoke rose gently from its chimneys. It was a modest structure, austere and simple, yet it radiated serenity. The path leading to it was narrow and protected by the natural contours of the land, ensuring privacy and security. Isabella's green eyes widened in awe. "It's beautiful, peaceful." Gabriel nodded. "Yes, here we will find safety, but know this, peace is temporary. The world outside is still dangerous, and Ricardo will not give up his pursuit. We must remain cautious." They approached the monastery gates. A monk, tall and serene, met them at the entrance. His robes were simple, his posture disciplined, yet there was an unmistakable kindness in his gaze. Gabriel stepped forward, explaining their situation quietly. The monk listened carefully, then nodded. "You may stay," he said. "This place is for those in need. But remember, safety is found in patience and humility. You must respect the rules of the monastery." Isabella exhaled, relief washing over her in waves. For the first time since the wedding, she felt a sense of true reprieve. Gabriel guided her inside, and they were led to a simple room with wooden floors and small windows that let in the fading sunlight. As Isabella rested, Gabriel remained by the doorway, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Though they had reached sanctuary, he knew the peace would be fleeting. Ricardo's fury was far from spent, and Clara's calculated ambition ensured that pursuit would continue. For now they had safety, but the storm beyond the mountains was only beginning. The monastery lay silent under the morning mist. its stone walls glowing softly in the first light of day. Isabella Duarte rose from the simple wooden bed, her green eyes wide with cautious wonder. Her wedding gown had been replaced with a modest dress provided by the monks, its fabric light and comfortable, though far from the luxurious garments she once wore. The simplicity felt strange, yet liberating. She could move freely without the weight of expectation pressing on her shoulders. Gabriel Montero, ever vigilant, paced near the window. His blue eyes scanned the tree line beyond the monastery, alert to any movement. The tranquility of the monastery offered temporary respite, but he knew danger still lurked beyond the mountains. His brown hair fell across his forehead as he paused, considering their next steps. "We cannot stay hidden forever," he murmured. "Ricardo will search relentlessly. We must plan carefully." Isabella approached him, her hands clasped in front of her. "I understand, but for now, for just this moment, can we allow ourselves to breathe? I haven't felt safe in weeks." Gabriel's expression softened, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "You may breathe, Isabella, but remain aware. Freedom is fragile, especially when it is new." Their morning passed quietly. Monks moved through the courtyard, their footsteps silent on the stone paths. A few offered warm smiles to Isabella, acknowledging her presence without probing questions. Gabriel remained protective, standing near her whenever strangers approached. Despite the calm, both were aware of the impermanence of safety. Later that day, Gabriel and Isabella met with the head monk, a tall man with gentle gray eyes and an aura of authority. His robes hung simply over his broad frame, his voice calm, yet commanding. "You are welcome here," he said, "but the monastery protects only those who respect its rules and contribute to its care. You may find safety, but it will not be given without effort." Gabriel bowed his head. "We understand. We only seek temporary refuge until it is safe to move further. She has been forced into a life of expectation and control, and now we seek a place to recover." The monk studied Isabella carefully. "Your presence here must be honest. Fear and urgency may guide you, but deception will only bring harm. Respect the sanctuary, and it will protect you." Isabella nodded, a mix of relief and humility flooding her heart. "I understand," she whispered. The head monk gestured to the monastery's grounds. "There is work to be done, as there always is. You will assist in the gardens, in the kitchens, in the upkeep of the monastery. It is simple work, but it strengthens the body and mind. In return, you will find safety, nourishment, and guidance." Gabriel exchanged a glance with Isabella. Though modest, the offer of daily tasks represented a structure she had not known since leaving the Montero estate. Here, there were no expectations of status or appearances, only honest labor and mutual respect. Over the next few days, Isabella began to adjust. She learned to carry water from the well, tend to the small garden plots, and prepare simple meals under the watchful eye of the monks. Her green eyes often drifted to the distant mountains, imagining the paths that had led them here. Though life was simpler, she felt a strange strength growing within her, forged by both fear and survival. Gabriel, meanwhile, maintained his vigilance. Every morning he patrolled the outskirts of the monastery, checking for signs of pursuit. Though the monks reassured him of safety, he knew Ricardo would not relent. The Montero estate was built on control and intimidation, and Ricardo's pride would not allow this escape to go unanswered. One afternoon, while tending to the monastery gardens, Isabella paused and looked at Gabriel. "Do you think he will come for us?" Her voice trembled, though her posture remained upright. Gabriel knelt beside her, resting a steady hand on her shoulder. "He may try," he said honestly. "But as long as we remain careful and follow the monastery's guidance, he will not find us easily. Patience and planning are our strongest allies." For a brief moment, they allowed themselves to imagine a life beyond pursuit and fear. Isabella could feel the weight of her past lift slightly, replaced by a cautious hope. Gabriel, too, allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. His loyalty to family had been tested, but in helping Isabella, he discovered a new purpose, one rooted not in duty, but in choice and justice. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the monastery grounds, Isabella and Gabriel sat together quietly. The world beyond the monastery remained uncertain, but for now they found strength in their shared determination. The sanctuary was hidden, yet even here, the future remained unknown. Every day brought the possibility of discovery, yet the bond between them grew stronger with each passing challenge. They had escaped one danger, only to face a world that demanded courage, trust, and unwavering resolve. And deep in the Montero estate, far below the mountains, Ricardo and Clara plotted their next move, unaware that their prey had found shelter and purpose. The pursuit was far from over, and the storm that would test both families was only beginning to gather its full force. The morning sun filtered through the tall, narrow windows of the monastery, casting a soft golden light on the stone floors. Isabella Duarte moved quietly, tending the small herb garden near the entrance. Her hands, delicate but steady, plucked weeds and turned the soil, her green eyes focused and alert. The simple rhythm of labor gave her a sense of calm she had not felt in weeks. Yet her mind remained on the past she had fled and the future still uncertain. Gabriel Montero stood nearby, his tall frame casting a long shadow over the garden. His blue eyes were distant, scanning the surrounding woods beyond the monastery walls. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the distant caw of a bird, kept him vigilant. Though the monastery provided temporary safety, Gabriel knew that Ricardo's ambition would not allow their freedom to endure. "Isabella," he said softly, breaking the silence. She looked up, her green eyes meeting his. "I need to know how you are holding up, mentally, physically." Isabella paused, considering her words. "I am stronger than I thought," she admitted, "but I cannot forget what I left behind, nor the danger that follows. Every night I worry we will be discovered." Gabriel nodded solemnly. "You should not carry that burden alone. I feel it too. Ricardo will not rest, and Clara's schemes are meticulous. We must be prepared for anything." As they spoke, a monk approached, his simple robe brushing the stone floor. His gray hair was thin but neatly kept, and his calm demeanor carried authority. "Gabriel, Isabella," he said, his voice steady. "The monastery offers refuge, but safety is not permanent. You must learn to protect yourselves in ways beyond hiding. There is more to survival than shelter and food. You must understand vigilance, patience, and observation." Isabella's hands froze mid-motion. "Teach us," she said. "We must be ready no matter what comes." The monk nodded. "Good. Begin with observation. Notice everything in your surroundings, sounds, smells, movements. Danger is often silent before it arrives." Gabriel exchanged a glance with Isabella. Both understood the gravity of the lesson. Ricardo's reach extended far and his methods were unpredictable. They could not rely solely on the sanctuary of the monastery. They needed awareness, skill, and unity. The day passed with rigorous instruction. Isabella learned to detect the faintest shifts in the environment, subtle signs that might indicate approaching footsteps or hidden observers. Gabriel, while already physically capable, practiced silent movement, teaching Isabella techniques to minimize noise and stay concealed. Her green eyes absorbed every lesson, and her posture became sharper, more confident, reflecting a growing resilience. During a brief respite, they walked along the monastery's outer path, overlooking the valley below. The sunlight painted golden lines on the distant fields, and birds soared high above. Isabella spoke softly, her voice carrying a mixture of hope and fear. "Do you think we will ever be free, truly?" she asked. Gabriel's gaze remained fixed on the horizon. Freedom is earned, Isabella, not given. We can hide, we can evade, but the moment comes when we must face those who pursue us. Our strength, our unity, and our resolve will determine our path. Isabella's heart quickened. In Gabriel's presence, she felt a mix of safety and anticipation. His unwavering commitment was a source of comfort, but also a reminder that their journey was far from over. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the monastery grounds, the quiet was broken by the distant sound of bells. The monks were gathering for evening prayers, their chants rising in a harmonious rhythm that filled the stone halls. Isabella and Gabriel paused to listen, the sound a reminder of stability amid chaos. Yet even in this moment of serenity, a shadow lingered in their thoughts. Ricardo and Clara were still plotting, far below in the Montero estate. Their intelligence network was vast, and whispers of the couple's escape had reached ears both loyal and treacherous. Every action they took, no matter how small, could lead to discovery. Isabella's green eyes met Gabriel's. "We've come so far," she whispered. Do you think they will give up?" Gabriel shook his head slightly, his expression somber. "No, they never give up. But we are learning, growing stronger with every day. Their persistence is not the measure of our failure, but the test of our resolve." Night fell, and the monastery grew silent, except for the soft rustle of trees outside and the occasional creak of old stone. Isabella lay on the simple wooden bed, her thoughts restless. She replayed the events of the past weeks, her escape from the altar, the flight through the forest, the climb up the mountains, and felt a mixture of fear and determination. Gabriel remained awake, sitting near the window. The moonlight reflected off his sharp features, illuminating the blue of his eyes and the lines of resolve etched into his face. He knew that the coming days would require more than vigilance. They would need courage, intelligence, and unwavering trust in each other. As sleep finally claimed Isabella, Gabriel's mind stayed alert. Every whisper of the past, every shadow of threat, reminded him of the danger that awaited beyond the monastery walls. But in that quiet night, amid the chant of monks and the stillness of the mountains, he allowed himself a rare thought. Perhaps, just perhaps, they could endure, and perhaps, together, they could overcome the storm that pursued them. The early morning fog clung to the mountain slopes, wrapping the monastery in a dense, silvery blanket. Isabella Duarte adjusted the hem of her simple dress, stepping carefully along the stone path that led to the outer gardens. Her green eyes scanned the horizon, alert to every subtle movement. The mountains provided sanctuary, but safety was never permanent. Every sound carried the possibility of discovery. Gabriel Montero walked beside her, his tall, steady frame a reassuring presence. His blue eyes were constantly scanning the edges of the forest, muscles tense, ready for any threat. His brown hair was tousled from sleep and the morning wind, but his posture remained upright, commanding. Isabella drew strength from his vigilance, yet she sensed the burden of responsibility weighing heavily upon him. "Gabriel," Isabella whispered, glancing at him. "How long can we truly hide here? Ricardo and Clara, they will not give up. I can feel it in my bones." Gabriel's jaw tightened, his gaze unwavering. "We can hide as long as we need, but hiding is not the ultimate goal. We must prepare for the day we face them. Until then, patience is our strongest ally. Every movement, every choice must be deliberate. Ricardo's power is vast, but it is not absolute." Their morning routine was methodical. Isabella worked alongside the monks in the garden, learning to cultivate herbs and vegetables, her hands gaining strength and skill. Gabriel assisted with heavier tasks, moving stone and timber for repairs around the monastery. Despite the labor, there was a quiet rhythm that calmed both of them. For a few hours, the past seemed distant, replaced by purpose and the tangible satisfaction of work. During a brief pause, Isabella sat on a stone bench, her green eyes following a small stream that trickled through the courtyard. Gabriel knelt beside her, placing a protective hand over hers. "You are stronger than you know," he said softly. "The courage you showed escaping the estate is only the beginning. These mountains will teach you resilience, but the true test will come when we confront the dangers we cannot escape." Isabella swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking in. "I feel the fear, Gabriel, but I also feel hope. As long as you are with me, I believe we can endure whatever comes." Gabriel's expression softened, yet his vigilance never wavered. "Hope is necessary. Without it, we falter. But it must be tempered with caution. Ricardo is clever, relentless, and dangerous. Clara is no less cunning. They will use every advantage, every deception to find us." The afternoon brought an unexpected disturbance. A faint crackle of movement echoed from the forest beyond the monastery walls. Gabriel immediately rose, his posture tense, his blue eyes narrowing. Isabella's pulse quickened, but she remained still, trusting him to assess the situation. A scout sent by Ricardo had approached, attempting to map the monastery's hidden paths. Gabriel's training and preparation allowed him to detect the intruder before any harm could come to Isabella. Using careful silence and stealth, he guided her to a hidden alcove behind the stone walls. There she crouched, heart pounding, as Gabriel moved quietly to intercept the intruder. Minutes later, the scout, unaware that they had been detected, retreated into the forest. Gabriel returned to Isabella, his expression a mixture of relief and warning. "This is a reminder," he said quietly, "that Ricardo's reach extends even here. We cannot underestimate him or his resources." Isabella exhaled, her green eyes meeting his. "I understand. But we are ready, Gabriel. We have grown stronger. We are not the same people who fled the estate days ago." He nodded. "Exactly. Every lesson, every challenge, every moment of fear has prepared us. But the road ahead is uncertain. The moment of confrontation will demand more than courage. It will demand strategy, patience, and unwavering trust in each other." Evening fell, casting long shadows across the monastery courtyard. Isabella and Gabriel sat near the small stone fountain, the water reflecting the fading light. The monks had retired for the night, their chants replaced by silence. Isabella's mind wandered to Ricardo and Clara, imagining the strategies they might employ to reclaim control. Gabriel spoke softly, breaking her reverie. "Every action they take is a reaction to ours. They may think they control the situation, but here, we are the ones with knowledge, preparation, and determination. We are not helpless." Isabella leaned against him, her green eyes steady and resolute. "Then we endure. Together." Gabriel placed a hand on her shoulder, a silent promise. The mountains, the monastery, and their own resilience formed a shield, but the true battle was still ahead. Ricardo's ambition would not rest, and Clara's cunning would not yield. Their journey through danger, deception, and discovery was far from over. The night deepened, wrapping the monastery in darkness. Isabella and Gabriel remained alert, knowing that safety was temporary, but their bond, trust, and shared purpose gave them strength. The shadows of pursuit would not diminish their courage. Instead, they reinforced the determination that had carried them this far. Tomorrow, the real challenge would begin, and they would face it, together, without fear. The first light of dawn spilled over the monastery walls, illuminating the rugged mountain peaks and the valley below. Isabella Duarte stood near the entrance, her green eyes scanning the horizon with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Her dress, simple and practical, reflected the months of survival and adaptation in the mountains. Gone were the trappings of her previous life. In their place, she had gained resilience, strength, and clarity of purpose. Gabriel Montero emerged from the shadows of the stone corridor, his blue eyes sharp and alert. His tall, commanding presence carried a quiet intensity. His brown hair was wind-tossed from their early morning patrols, but his posture remained unwavering. Together they had grown stronger, their bond forged through flight, fear, and shared purpose. "This is it," Gabriel said softly, his voice carrying weight. "Ricardo and Clara are advancing up the mountain. They've found the path to the monastery. We must face them soon." Isabella's heart raced, but her resolve was steady. "I am ready," she said firmly. "We've prepared for this moment. Whatever comes, we face it together." Gabriel nodded, a brief flicker of relief crossing his features. "Good. But remember, victory does not come from strength alone. Strategy, patience, and unity will determine the outcome." The monastery gates remained closed, its stone walls a silent witness to the approaching storm. The monks had offered guidance and refuge, but the final test lay beyond these walls. From their vantage point, Isabella and Gabriel could see figures moving along the mountain path below. Ricardo's men, loyal and determined, pressed onward with quiet precision. Clara's calculated glare accompanied every step, her intentions clear. Gabriel motioned for Isabella to stay behind him as he descended toward the path, using the terrain to their advantage. The rocky ground and narrow trails gave them control over the approach, allowing them to anticipate the movements of Ricardo's forces. When they were within a short distance, Gabriel raised his hand, signaling for Isabella to remain still. Ricardo's eyes caught sight of them first, his expression hardening with anger and disbelief. "Gabriel!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the valley. "How dare you betray your family?" Gabriel's blue eyes met Ricardo's, unwavering and resolute. "I betrayed only the injustice you represent," he replied. "This woman is not a possession. She is her own person, and she will not be harmed or coerced by you." Isabella stepped forward, her green eyes blazing with determination. "I am not your pawn, Ricardo," she said firmly. "I will not marry you. I choose my own life, my own path." Ricardo's face twisted with fury, and Clara's gaze sharpened. They advanced together, but the mountainous terrain slowed them, giving Gabriel and Isabella a tactical advantage. Gabriel's careful planning allowed them to anticipate every maneuver, every attempt at interception. The confrontation reached its peak near a narrow ledge overlooking the valley. Ricardo and Clara paused, their options limited by the geography. Gabriel positioned himself between Isabella and the intruders, his stance protective, yet controlled. "You cannot escape us forever," Ricardo spat. Gabriel's voice was calm but firm. "Perhaps, but some paths are not meant to be followed. Your power over others ends here. Isabella's life is not yours to command." Isabella took a deep breath, summoning the courage she had cultivated over months of hardship. "This ends today. I am free, and I will not be forced back into fear or control. We walk away, and you will not follow." Ricardo and Clara realized the depth of their miscalculation. The months of pursuit had met with a force neither had anticipated: courage, preparation, and unity. Reluctantly, they stepped back, the narrow mountain path leaving them no immediate leverage. Gabriel guided Isabella along the safe path, maintaining vigilance until they reached the monastery gates. Once inside, the monks provided immediate sanctuary, reinforcing their position with quiet authority. Isabella's green eyes softened as she realized the full weight of their achievement. Freedom, safety, and choice were theirs to claim. Gabriel turned to her, his blue eyes reflecting pride and relief. "You have endured more than most could imagine," he said. "But this is only the beginning of a life you can truly call your own." Isabella smiled faintly, the tension of months slowly releasing from her shoulders. "I never imagined I could feel this. Alive," she admitted. "All I knew was fear. But now I see possibility, and I see strength in myself. I didn't know existed. They spent the evening walking the monastery grounds, the sun setting behind the mountains, painting the sky with hues of gold and crimson. The chants of monks in the distance served as a reminder that peace was cultivated through patience, reflection, and effort. Isabella and Gabriel walked side by side, their bond stronger than ever, forged in shared trials and unbroken determination. The future remained uncertain beyond the sanctuary walls, but for the first time, Isabella felt true autonomy. She had escaped the altar, defied expectation, and claimed her freedom. Gabriel had stood by her, not as a protector alone, but as an equal, sharing the weight of their journey and the triumph of their choices. And as night fell over the mountains, the stars illuminating the vast sky, Isabella knew that the storm behind them had passed, leaving only the promise of a life defined by courage, choice, and love. The pursuit had ended, and their story, once defined by fear and obligation, could now be written by their own hands.